In this quick exercise, I would like to show you also a different approach in how we could, for example, start sculpting the frame. So I'm going to add a plane. I made sure that my 3D cursor is along the y-axis at the world center. In edit mode, I can rotate my geometry, scale it down a little bit. And then I'm going ahead and try to block out the basic shapes. Maybe like this. And maybe here I need another point going up and down. And then here I'm going to have a rounding, so I need to extrude this one out and then position it maybe like this. Extrude it down, move it to there and there. And then extrude it down and there. Maybe I make this a little bit bigger. And then from there, I'm going to extrude this one down, position it there. Maybe I need another loop cut here to push this point down a little bit. And then as before, extrude, repositioning the points. Here I might need some extra points to have more definition for that curve. And probably the same I will need here. And there. Okay. And then extrude, position it. Okay. So this way I quickly block everything out. So let's see how this shape will look when we start applying the subdivision modifier. And that's actually quite good. Maybe I would like to sharpen some of those corners maybe a little bit. And here actually extrude it out and then sculpt this a little bit. Okay, so this currently is just a flat sheet, and I would like to have more like a diamond cross section. So I'm going to add a loop cut, kind of like this, and then I can go ahead and undo some of my work, because those loop cuts I can quickly recreate, but I just realized that because of the amount of loop cuts I added, I have way more points to control than I really want to have to deal with by hand. So as you can see, I position those points along the black line where I would like to have a crease. And the loop cuts are very easily recreated by simply cutting them in again, but then the positioning of all the points are more even. So I trust the software there a little bit more than just my hand. Now if I go in now and say loop cut here and move in a little bit, you see it's not really very difficult. It's actually rather easy to do. and then maybe a loop cut here if I want to, there to tighten the surface a little bit. Okay, so at this stage, then maybe I can select my loop cuts, and let's say I select only this loop cut actually. I can turn on mirror modifier along the y-axis, and then if I start pushing this one out, I can start creating a volume out of that flat sheet, as you can see. Let's shade this one. And maybe those should go a little bit as well, maybe not so much, of course. They have to be away a little bit so we get a volume instead of a flat sheet. And maybe actually those loop cuts I rather don't want to have be there, because you can see how it starts creasing the shape there. So that's not really visually, or aesthetically what I'm really looking for. So a little bit of panning around and maybe seeing if there are some shapes or edges I could adjust. I feel like to get closer to my initial drawing, well, I could add a loop cut there, but then select those points and move them over. Actually, maybe I have to remove this one first. Do this again. And maybe this point can go down a little bit. Same, for example, here. And I'm not sure if maybe this edge starts getting a little bit too pinched, so that I move those points a little bit closer to each other. That of course always starts to pinch the surface, but at the concave curve, so that's just normal to it. Okay, so that actually I really like. My current problem is if I set the mirror modifier at the first, you see how everything shrinks down way too much. So what I'm going to do is actually maybe move this one out a little bit. You see that it snapped back. It's because I have now a gap here, and I'm going to loop cut select that surface, set my 3D cursor as my pivot point, then press E for extrude, S and Y, and type in 0. And then I have a very small flat surface. Of course, that's what you want. You don't want necessarily to have like a razor sharp edge at that point. And maybe this one could be moved out, maybe just a notch more. maybe like this, just a little bit. This one can be moved out and be moved out. Okay. So you see, it's basically resulting into the same shape. So instead of using a cube and then extruding it out, I use just a flat surface, put in a crease line. And for example, right now I'm going to recrease that surface even tighter, so it's really clearly a visible separation line. And then if maybe you want the inner and outer edges to be sharper, you can do this like this. And let's say the outer edge should be more round instead of being so straight. Well, what we can do and have to do in this case is, our enemy is this center profile we have. So I really would like to get rid of it, but if I delete it, my problem is I have this gap. So my only way in this type of modeling is I have to apply my mirror modifier, because then I have a solid object, and then I can remove this center line and you will immediately see what will happen. It gets a lot rounder. And then, because I have those loop cuts down here, the inside, for example, is flat, and then the outside is nice and round.